Well, hello, and welcome to the PJH Writing Command Center for another podcast episode from God Bless the King Publishing, LLC. Woo! And before I get too carried away, let me get the old fingers lubed up because this is a special podcast episode that's been lingering for too long. Okay, here we go. All right, I got it. Oh, woo! I had to call CQ for this one. Yeah. And here we are. I am the flagship author, chief photographer, chief cook, bottle washer, music critic, music reviewer, and the chief radio operator at station WA2ASQ, Whiskey Alpha 2, Alpha Sierra, Quebec. Morse code, the first digital communications. And welcome to the podcast. This podcast episode has been, as I mentioned, lingering for a long time. And all my my buddies, my ham radio buddies, are like, Paulie, yeah, stories about the old man and stories about New Jersey and your opinions and music and all the yakety smackity's good, but when you got to talk about ham radio, a true passion of mine since I was, oh my gosh, fell in love with radio when I was 10 years old. But let's get to the root of the podcast. Got to get some business out of the way. And we got a small crowd over here. And yeah, welcome to the Writing Command Center. And here we go. Before I get too deep into this, let's get our little Orphan Annie decoder pins out and say commercial time. And this podcast is proudly sponsored by Corporate Facilities Group Incorporated, the leader in technical consulting, facility maintenance management, property services throughout America. And now CFG Incorporated is proud and honored to announce the new pre-construction department headed up by the amazing Steve McMillan. And give it up for Steve, guys and gals. Pre-con services, and you can check them out at the web, www.corporatefacilitiesgroupfigure1.com. That's www.corporatefacilitiesgroupfigure1.com. Check out the page, the new page for the pre-con services for residential and light commercial projects, and tell them Paulie sent you. Yeah. Tell them Paulie sent you. And we thank Lydia, Steve, and Liliana for all their support and love, and check out CFG Incorporated. Thank you so much. So here we are to all my ham radio buddies. And I have to say, when I mention to somebody that I am an amateur radio operator or a ham radio operator, they kind of look at me like I have 17 heads. People look at me like I have 17 heads ordinarily. But anyway, they say, ham radio, that's still around? Isn't that like the old guys used to do? Well, I'm an old guy now, but no, ham radio is one of the, I would say obviously I'm a photographer too, so I'm biased. Maybe one of the greatest hobbies that we could ever endeavor to dive into. And I think in the book Experiences, Essays on my life, I mentioned how ham radio just changed my life. And I need to do a podcast on radio. And for you folks that are not interested in ham radio and maybe said, I ain't got to listen to this podcast, this is just crazy stuff, I will say that radio remains the magic in our lives. If you think about your cell phones now, you're communicating over these airwaves, and you're communicating over um, strange frequencies, very, very high, maybe gigahertz, I don't know. Towers and cell phone signals and wireless and all this stuff. The precursor, of course, is radio and television and the magic of images that come over the air and then they're on our TV screen. As a young boy, I was just captured by all this and just fascinated how all around us in the air, in the sky, there's these signals, there's this magic, there's this learning, there's this entertainment, there's sports, there's the Jets losing games. There's the Stanley Cup and Nottingham Forest scoring goals and all this stuff and people's opinions and the news and the weather and the music and the music and the music. I talked about WNEW FM 102.7. Where rock lives, the magic of Gene Shepard, the great Kilo 2 Oscar Romeo Sierra on WOR 710 on the AM dial out of New York. The magic of radio. It's all around us, and it's a precursor to so much. And ham radio operators, yes, we're still out here, and there's millions of us across the world. And I may be biased, like I said, but ham radio has contributed so much in technology. I don't think space communications, inner space, outer space, would exist without ham radio operators. Guys tinkering in their garage, in their basement, late at night over dingy light bulbs, soldering irons, hot, melting solder, creating all these fantastic little radios and gizmos and gadgets that communicate across the world and stringing antennas up in trees and putting up wires. It's the greatest hobby. And I love photography, like I said, but I think, I'm going to elevate it. Ham radio is the greatest hobby, the technology, the study. You have to pass tests. You have to get licenses. You got to do all this stuff. And, Morse code, the magic of learning another language. It's just an amazing hobby that just shaped my life and gave me a love of electronics and electricity and brought me into the careers that I had. And I wouldn't know where I would be without ham radio. And now all these years later, I was licensed as Whiskey November 2, Alpha Sierra, Quebec, back when there were novice licenses in the United States of America. And then I graduated and worked my way up to, and I've kept the call sign. I knocked the N out. They used to call it when you only had 2 years. I think it was 2 years to go from a novice to a general, or you had to do the whole testing thing over again. It was very stressful. And they called that knocking the N out, your call sign. I knocked the N out. I don't know, somewhere in the, I'm not going to say the year because then people would realize how old I am. And I kept the call sign Whiskey Alpha 2, Alpha Sierra, Quebec, all these years. And I achieved the extra class, the highest level of amateur radio. But at any rate, I could go on and on about the magic of ham radio. But yes, we're still out here. Emergency communications, when all else fails and your cell phones don't work and the internet is dead and technology doesn't save you, find a ham radio guy because he's going to survive the zombie apocalypse. He's going to be on the air figuring out where food and water and safe places are. Find the old ham guy. Or the young ham guy, or the young ham gal, or the old ham gal. We're out here, and we're going to be able to communicate when everything else fails. The old military thing as a radio man, they drilled into my head, improvise, adapt, and overcome, because everything human made will fail at some point. So you need to improvise, adapt, and overcome. What are you going to do when it all fails? Ham radio. Quick story before I get to the root of this podcast, which is actually my tips of operating QRP. QRP being a Q code, Q signal for very low power, 5 watts or less. So I'm sorry. All my ham radio buddies are like, yeah, we know this, Paulie. Get to your tips. But I gotta ramble a little bit because I'm a storyteller and at heart I'm an author. So, at any rate, quick story: 9/11. You know, I was in northern New Jersey at the time, and maybe I need to do a podcast on 9/11 and how it changed my life and my involvement. But I can remember I was at the Worldwide Camera Corporation, and we actually had offices in the World Trade Center, tragically, and loved ones there, and employees were lining up because I had my VHF 2-meter rig in my work truck, and I was desperately trying to get word out to my ham buddies on repeaters and on simplex and every avenue I could through the Salvation Army, the Saturn, through Morse, the great Morse networks that were active back then, trying to get word on loved ones. And because the landlines, they failed. I mean, the landlines failed within minutes, and cell phone networks were trashed. That technology was not where it is now, but even then, back then, it was trashed. And it was a desperate situation, and I managed to help a number of folks. There were hams that actually rode and got out to the outer bridge crossings, be it the Tappan Zee and the George Washington Bridge and the tunnels, and they would line up back there because there were people actually walking across the bridges that escaped Lower Manhattan and walking back to Jersey. And you would try payphones and you would try your cell phones, and landlines were nothing. And they wanted to get word to the loved ones. So there would be hams along Route 4 and Route 17 as these folks escaped the tragedy and the mayhem and the dust and the horribleness, and trying to walk back to their homes. And hams would help them and get word out, get to a guy in Kansas who actually had a landline that might work and provided communications and provided comfort for so many folks. So I was involved in that, but that's a different story. So at any rate, the ham radio exists because of all the things we bring to this world and the technology and the emergency services. And it's just a fantastic hobby. So my tip to the non-hams who might be listening to this podcast and tuning in, if you want to understand more about ham radio, go to the American Radio Relay League on the web, ARRL.org. My terrible New Jersey accent, so that's Alpha Romeo Lima.org. The American Radio Relay League is the foremost organization that supports amateur radio in the United States and probably a leader throughout the world. And they're based in Newington, Connecticut, where I happen to have one of my residences. They're only about 3 miles from my house. And on that website with the league, you can learn almost everything you want to learn about amateur radio. And maybe you want to get involved in the hobby. Maybe it's something you're interested in. You no longer have to know the Morse code to get a license. That requirement was given up a number of years ago. So you can get in at a low level and test and learn and take your examinations, but the Morse code is no longer a prerequisite. So here are the 10 tips of PJH, WA2ASQ, for operating QRP. And I am a dedicated QRP operator, not only because of circumstances, because the Rating Command Center is an apartment in Central Virginia, and I'm limited to what I could do with antennas, and I'm limited to what I could do with output power. As I mentioned, QRP being 5 watts or less. And yeah, I've had my heyday in the sun, big pieces of property where I actually had a whole delta loop antenna that went around my whole acre and a half of property. I've had beams and towers, and I've had high power linear amplifiers, and I've had it all and done contests, and that's all wonderful. And beam antennas, and I could turn them and twist them and point to where I wanted to and put out a big signal and knock somebody out of their chair over in England. Enjoyed all that. Really did. But when my life changed, and it changed radically, and I was faced with a life on the road. I was faced with life out of hotels. I was faced with life out of apartments. I couldn't put on my big antennas anymore. I couldn't have my big rigs. I couldn't have my linears. I couldn't have all the stuff I used to have. And I scaled down to QRP, and I fell in love. I absolutely fell in love with QRP. The challenge, making contacts with such low power. And for you non-technical folks, back in the old days, we'd have night lights, and they would light up the hallways with little tiny light bulbs so you didn't stub your toe when you went to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And usually they were about 4 watts, and they would light up the hallway. So if you kind of convert it to wattage on RF output, we're using just about what a night light puts out in light in RF power to our antennas. So it's very, very low power. So it's a challenge to have other stations hear us. And there's a saying around with the QRO operators, and QRO operators are high power guys. That's a Q sign for high power guys. And they say life's too short for QRP. And I get it. And my old man used to say life's too short to drink cheap beer. You only go around once, and I get it. But from a ham that's played both sides of the coin, I will say to the QRO guys, life's too short not to take challenges. And challenges mold us. Challenges, it's not always the easy way out. And challenges teach us patience, and they teach us conniving, and they teach us ways around the easy ways. Yeah, it's easy to push that foot switch or key that transmitter and blow the guy out of the chair. But a QRP peanut whistle signal is something special. And when you work that person on the other side of the world, it's a challenge, and it's an achievement. And for me, I get it. Life's short. But for me, life's too short not to try challenges, not to try QRP. So there's my counter. So Paulie is a dedicated QRP operator. And if you go to our YouTube channel for God Bless K Publishing, there's several ham radio videos, and you can see the station here. You can see it at the Writing Command Center. You can see my podcast post. You can see my radio setup, and it's minimal. It's very, very minimal. And I probably could make this podcast 3 hours. But if you go to the video, you'll see the station, and I'll explain more of what we do here. But for the most part, because we're in an apartment and I had to improvise, adapt, and overcome, my main antenna is the downspout gutter in the front of the apartment. I drilled a small hole, put a little brass self-tapping screw into the downspout, and I'm lucky because they're metal downspouts, and it leads to a long gutter which goes along the whole front of the apartment building. And there are self-tappers and rivets that go from the downspout to the gutter. So it's metal all the way, and I got a pretty good junction, pretty good bond, and I got about 75 feet of gutter, another 35 feet of downspout. And we feed that with a single alligator clip and a piece of number 14 wire, which leads to our balun. And I use a conversion box there. And then I switch to coax and tune it with either my auto tuner or a mechanical old MFJ, my old faithful MFJ figures 941 Charlie tuner, which I've had for 30 some years, and I tune it to almost every frequency. I can even tune 160 meters. And that's what I use. And off of the ground of the tuners and off of the ground of the rigs, I have a ground plane. And I use a bunch of number 12 wires. I live by myself here, so they're tripping hazards. But even if I had a few beers, I know where they are. And I've cut those to different frequency lengths. And then one main radial clips to the cold water pipe system of the apartment, which is probably a pretty extensive copper system under this old apartment house. So I got a great ground plane versus a vertical and a little horizontal. So there we go. That's like I said, go to the YouTube for God Bless the Keg Publishing, and you can see the station. I explain much more. So let's get to the 10 tips. Paulie's 10 tips of operating QRP. Number 1, use CW. Use Morse code. A single sideband AM voice phone operations are going to be a challenge. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to call, and maybe make one contact, and it's going to be a difficult contact. The piercing note of Morse code gets through. It always gets through. And I'm telling you, in my experience of working QRP, and I've worked all states, I have worked DXCC twice with this rain gutter antenna at 5 watts. That's 100 countries. And I did it once at 5 watts, and I did it once at about 2 watts, 2 or less. I worked DXCC with rain gutter antennas with Morse code. Voice, I remember I operated an 80-meter contest one time with phone at QRP, and I operated dedicated the whole entire contest, 48 hours, 36 hours, whatever it was. And I think I made 15 contacts. Screamed my brains out and made 15 contacts. And, of course, probably Mexico and Canada counted as DX, and maybe Bermuda, some of the closer countries. Alaska, Hawaii. So it was tough. If you're not a Morse code person, I understand. You can't learn the code. You don't want to learn the code. It's too hard. It's too challenging. It's like learning Spanish. It's like learning another language. It certainly is a major undertaking. Then switch to the digital modes. Maybe the Foxtrot Tango Figure 8. Try radio teletype if FT8 is in your bag. The digital will get through too. It's just that you're going to get frustrated if you work phone QRP. And as a new operator, if you're taking on QRP, it's going to be frustrating. So number 1 tip for Paulie is use Morse code. Worst case, go digital. Number 2, use the best antenna you can. Obviously, in an apartment, I'm limited. Sometimes I'll use an end wire. I'll drop it down outside the window. It's a little 24 gauge wire, and I'll hook it up to the bow, and then I'll run it across the top of the interior of the apartment and down the other side of the apartment. So most of the antenna wire is outside, which is good. And I'll tune that with my tuner. It depends on propagation and signals and the bands and my mood and a lot of other things. But use the best antenna you can. If DX is your long distance is your goal, then use a vertical antenna with a lot of grounds. Try to get that low angle of radiation. You can't go wrong with the good old-fashioned dipole. Get it as high up in the air as you can, as clear as you can. Good old dipole. Gets through. And if you have a beam, then God bless you. That's fantastic. But use the best antenna you possibly can, because that's going to help you. Number 3 is operate contests. Always operate contests, even if you dislike contests and you never send your logbook in. and you're not a competitor, that's fine. But if you get on the air with the contests, you're going to make a bundle of contacts, because you get these super stations, you get these guys with the multiple beams and the towers, and they're trying to make the points, and they're trying to, make one contact after another. They're going to listen. They're going to hear you. Even with a little tiny signal, they need the points. They might need the multiplier. They're going to pull you out of the mud. They're going to pay attention to you because they need you. Operate contests. That's where you'll make the, if your goal is worked all states or DXCC or some of the awards, that's where you're going to have some fun as a QRP operator, because you're going to clean it up. And honestly, even with my rain gutter or my little fed wire, if I hear them, I'm probably going to work them. It might take some effort, but I'm probably going to get through, especially in contests. If you can't do the contest and they just annoy you and they're too noisy, I get it. Get on some special events. Look for the special event stations. I did the 13 original colonies. I do it every year. Great special event. I love it. Love the 4th of July, and that's a great event to make some contacts. Number 4, try the whisper mode, a weak signal propagation reporter. And you can get on the air with this digital mode. It's a beacon mode. It's only a one-way transmission. It only sends out, and then you go on the Whisper Reporter website, and you see who's hearing your signal. And to go back to my promo for ham radio in the beginning, Whisper is one of the examples of how hams contribute to technology. Scientists use this data now to study propagation and how radio signals work and how they might be able to communicate to outer space or long distance, or use radio signals for other technology. Whisper. I am presently using, and there is a YouTube video on that. I'm on the air right now with a ZAC-Tech. It's 100 milliwatts. And it's putting out a beacon signal on 17 meters right now. And I just looked before I recorded the podcast. With 100 milliwatts, I'm basically pinging, and people are hearing me all over North America right now. And you can study propagation. You can study how effective your antennas are. You can study all the things that you need to do. You can experiment, change your radio configuration, shorter coax, longer coax, change your antenna, change your angles, put a vertical up, put a horizontal antenna up. With Whisper, you can see how your signals are working at extremely low power. Through a rain gutter antenna, I've actually pinged Australia with 100 milliwatts from Central Virginia. It's amazing. It's a low investment. I think that ZAC-Tech, this is not a commercial for ZAC-Tech, but you ought to sponsor my podcast out there. It's yes, yeah, right. Thank you. It's a great little transmitter. It's very inexpensive. You can hook it up. It's easy. It comes with software, and it can redefine how your QRP station works, and you can just change the configurations as you need. Number 5 is understand frequencies. Understand the time of the day. Understand propagation. Go on propagation reports. See what bands are open at what times, and that's why Whisper can help you so much. Go on these frequencies and study and see when your best opportunity to make contacts is, be it short distance or be it DX, long distance. Know your frequencies, know your propagation, know your time of the seasons. As the seasons change and the wintertime comes, 40 meters comes alive on a cold winter night, and 80 meters and 160, you'll be amazed at the contacts you can make when the seasons change and the propagation changes and the bands quiet down. a hot summer day, it's maybe an opportunity. Thunderstorms are out there and cold fronts and weather fronts are moving. Maybe get on 6 meters, get on 10 meters, see what's happening there. Know your frequencies. If your goal is work the states, you're going to have to work the states that are closer to you. And that's a challenge. You got to get on 40. Maybe you got to get on 80 meters. If you need to work over to Alaska, you're going to have to get on 20 or 15. Know your frequencies. Number 6 is tail end. Learn to tail end. When a QSO is ending on CW or even on the digital modes, you got a peanut whistle signal. You're way below the noise level. So be patient, wait till somebody, maybe a stronger station, maybe he's S9, he's S10 at your station, and he's finishing up a QSO with another powerful station. Pick your station you want to call, throw out their call sign, and give them a shout. Give them a quick shout right at the end of that QSO when they sign off, because they might just hear you and come back to you. Tail ending is an art. You have to have perfect timing, and you have to really, really study it. I did it on the digital modes. I mentioned the 13 original colonies, and I'm here in Central Virginia, very close to the Maryland station, and I needed Maryland for my last of the 13 colonies, and I just couldn't nail them. I was on 40 meters, and maybe the band was a little open, and he's too close to me. But finally, on 80 meters by tail ending the back end of a QSO, I was able to nail Maryland. So learn to tail end. Number 7 is have patience. QRP is not about keying the transmitter and saying, this is Whiskey Alpha 2 Alpha Sierra Quebec. It's not about that. It's about tuning and listening and having patience. I talked about the tail ending, and I talked about contests, and it's about have patience, because if you don't have patience and your expectations are too high where you're going to just, key and send out your call sign and hundreds of stations are going to come back to you, you're going to get frustrated, and QRP might not be for you. So you have to have patience. Number 8 is to call CQ. And very often I'll get on 6 meters and look at the spotting networks and look at the propagation report, and there's nothing happening. I'll CQ. I'll go on 10 meters. I'll call CQ. I'll go on 17 meters. I'll call CQ. And usually what I do is I call CQ 3 times. And then I follow it with my call sign 3 times. If I get no responses, then I might go to 6 to 8 CQs and then my call sign 3 times. This is on CW. And I will do that while I'm doing other things here in the writing command center. I'll do it every 30 minutes. I'll pick a frequency. I'll go on 10 meters and say, okay, I'm going to just do this for 3 hours. And you will be amazed at the stations that eventually do come back to you. Sitting there calling CQ. I remember calling CQ, nothing. All of a sudden, a KL7 in Alaska pops out of the mud on 10 meters and answers me. It's just, a QRP signal with 5 watts into a rain gutter. Nobody's answering. Nobody's responding. There's nothing happening but static. And I don't know, called CQ like every 30 minutes for 3 hours, and all of a sudden a Alaska station answers me. So you never know what's out there. Number 9 on the Paulie list is tune the entire band. If you decide to tune on 10 meters or 15 or 20 or wherever you are, I'm an extra, so I go to the end of the band on CW and I tune all the way up until I get to the digital signals, which kind of override the CW, and I tune all the way back, and I stop and I listen to every station I hear, and I keep tuning and tuning and tuning, and then I go back. If I hear nothing, I do it 3, 4, 5 times. Tune the entire band. Don't just sit on 10, 20 kilocycles and just go up and down, say, oh, the band's dead, nothing's going on. I'll go drink beer or watch the Yankee game. You have to have patience. To go back to number 7, tune the entire band. You'll be amazed at what you hear out there. Maybe you tail end Parks on the Air station or a special event station, or just somebody ending up with a QSO. You just are amazed at what's out there. Have the patience. Tune the entire band. Don't just stay in the general class. Don't just stay in the extra. Tune the entire band. Number 10, always experiment with different bands. Yes, look at your spotting networks. Look at your propagation. And even if it says band conditions are poor, band conditions are fair, or whatever, give it a shot. Like I said, call CQ. Try these different bands. Very often, 20 meters will be my favorite band, and I'll start at 20, even though 17 meters is also one of my favorite bands. And I'll stick around on those bands, and then I'll say, okay, let me just try a shot at 6 meters. Let me just bump down to 10. The propagation report says poor conditions, whatever. And I'll just go there and see what's happening. I'll go to 24. I'll go up to 40 meters. I'll go to 160 in the middle of the night in the wintertime on a cold January night and be amazed at the contacts I can make. And you have to be able to experiment and change your antennas. And one last item, which is unpopular, is to get up early in the morning. If you're home on the weekends, or God bless you, you're retired or you're a student and you have extra time in your home, set your clock for 4 in the morning. Set your clock for 3 in the morning. Follow your sunrise and sunset patterns and get up. Get on these bands at the crack of dawn. If DX is your goal, the signals are going to follow the darkness paths. And you're going to hear your Japanese on the East Coast. You're going to hear your New Zealanders. You're going to hear your South Pacific. Same token, get on it at sunset. Maybe try 30 meters. Try 20 meters at sunset. 15 as that sun is coming across the globe and Europe is going to sleep and Africa is going to sleep, and here comes the darkness path. There are other hams who've set their alarm and gotten up early, and they've stayed up late, and they're listening for you. So you need to listen for them. So those are Paulie's QRP tips. There are 10 of them. Give it a shot. If you have the kind of rig that you can turn down a little bit and turn down the power to the 5 watts, try 4 watts, have some fun, and maybe even go to QRPP, which is like 2 watts. I've had fun with that. I remember in a contest one time, and this was on phone, so I violated my rule, but I was in a contest and I shouted back, and I guess over the years I've gotten a reputation of being a QRP operator for all these years. And I can't remember the operator I was talking to at a station I've talked to many times in a contest, and he says, "Paulie, turn it down. And I went to like 3 watts on my watt meter, and he says, "Yep, I can still hear you." And he was taking time out from making points. I was at a big super station, and turn it down. We finally got down to 1 watt, and he said, "I could just barely hear you, but I can hear you." If I went anything less than that, he would not hear me. But, and of course he's using a fantastic antenna system, but you can have a lot of fun. Like I said, life is full of challenges. Why not give it a challenge? So there we go. My 10 tips. Thank you to all the amateur radio operators out there. We love you. And you are just an amazing bunch of folks who bring so much to my life and bring so much to this world. And I've been just proud and honored to be part of the amateur radio community for all these years. And I'll continue to operate, until my last breath, and send out a CQ and maybe call it quits. So here we go. We're going to have to. we're gonna have to sign off here with a little SK here. So thank you for tuning in. And if ham radio is your bag, then that's awesome. If QRP is your bag, that's even better. And I hope I helped you. And if not, I'm just a guy from Paterson, New Jersey. What do I know? I went way over time on my podcast time, but that's okay. I've really enjoyed it. 73. And hey, be kind, be tolerant, be gentle. Kindness is cheap and it's for free. And kindness makes everything better. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time from the PJH Writing Command Center here in 73. Bye-bye for now. Thank you.